Ms. Cole, would you please introduce your staff, and then the floor is yours. And I'm sure you have quite a following and support group, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Pradmore. To my right is our board chair, Clay Haynes, and to my left is our finance analyst, Ian Myers. You are correct. We have a large number of members from the Nashville Arts Coalition, as well as almost all of my staff and our board of commissioners in the gallery, as well as someone whom I feel like I need to acknowledge who is not here, who is Scott Copeland, who is the former artistic director of the Nashville Children's Theater. This is the first budget Scott passed earlier in the year, and this is the first budget I've ever had to present without his guidance, and so I'm feeling his loss a little bit today. So without that, would you like me to go ahead and answer the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. The question at hand posed by the council is, how does the proposed budget help us deliver for the citizens of Nashville? I think it's important at the outset to frame that Metro Arts' work is not about providing direct services for citizens, but rather creating a community of artists, cultural organizations, and creators who improve the quality of life of our neighborhoods and our economies throughout Nashville. In other words, we add value to communities. We do not provide direct services. For those new to the council, you might not know that 3/4 of our departmental budget is a grants program, the single largest arts funder in the community, and all of that flows back directly into districts in the form of performances, field trips, festivals, and arts education experiences. I'll address both the proposed enhancements that are geared at our administrative capacity and artist support, and I will also address an area where there are no proposed enhancements, our grants funding. The mayor's budget shows a variety of reductions in both staff fringe and non-recurring revenue, but there are several proposed enhancements that equate to a net increase for our department of $45,500. The first enhancement is for one FTE, who will help our meet our increased program demand, including neighborhood outreach, artist training, coaching for cultural organizations, and assistance with the proposed restorative justice in the arts program that is funded through a PIP, a partnership with Judge Calloway and the Juvenile Court. There is a $13,400 transfer from the Public Art Fund to the General Fund balance for one employee. This will allow one of the employees who's already in our public art department to work on non-percent for art public art projects, including coaching with private developers who want to develop public art, as well as temporary art projects in communities. And the remaining $50,000 enhancement will actually go directly to local artists for the development of temporary art projects in the neighborhoods. This is part of a grant match for our National Endowment for the Arts grant that we have that will train 25 local artists this summer to do neighborhood-based projects. This $50,000 will be matched with money from the NEA to really do temporary projects in districts. We're really happy that the mayor's office has invested in our agency capacity, which is desperately needed, and opportunities for emerging local artists. When I joined the department in 2010, we set a very clear path to widen our reach and ensure that every Nashvilleian has access to art in their life. Because Metro Arts is doing more than ever, this budget provides us with necessary bandwidth, and that is a very good thing. But I'd like to speak a moment about our grants program. Last year, our grant budget totaled $1.9 million. That allowed us to engage 2.6 million people in the arts experiences through a variety of direct experiences and paid performances throughout the community. We were able to reach 96% of Metro schools through field trips and educational arts programs, and supported hundreds of hours of after-school arts for at-risk youth, offered free concerts to seniors living with dementia, theater camps, and programs at organizations as large as the Frisch Center and as small as the Global Education Center. Last year, in various forums conducted by the arts community that you attended, you no doubt heard about the significant challenge to expand arts grants program and help us keep pace with our population growth. Our grants budget has been relatively flat for nearly a decade, while our population has grown 15%. Every year, we have 23% increases in requests for funding as our organizations grow themselves and seek to serve a broader cultural and diverse audience in Nashville. Our peer cities like Austin, Charlotte, and Portland invest 2 to 3 times what we do in public funding for the arts through their grants programs. We recognize that our current condition is not optimal in order to maintain our potential. Metro Arts invest broadly, and we believe arts offer a triple bottom line for this community. They generate wages for creative workers, Those wages then create plays, performances, concerts, and exhibits that provide quality of life in your neighborhoods and your districts. And residents who attend those invest back in their communities, spending dollars on food, parking, and childcare, fueling neighborhood economies. We know that for every $1 for a ticket purchased in the arts, it generates 25 additional dollars in neighborhood spending. The initial question was how does our department in this budget deliver value? This budget will invest in our capacity and public artists, and that is something we deeply need. A next step for all of us, I hope, especially including this council, is to begin exploring how to enhance the arts grants budget in a strategic way that reflects our ambitions as a city, our actual growth trajectory, our international brand, and most importantly, the need to have an ROI that powerfully elevates arts as a positive force for citizens and neighborhoods.
Would you like to field some questions now from
I
the
would
councilman?
love to field questions.
Here we go. Councilman Mendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Cole. I have several questions that are really designed to help me understand more about the ability for the commission to accomplish its goals with the proposed budget. And just to start, if I understand right, from the peak funding of the grants program, the proposed budget is down about 20%, and it's been down about 20% for several years.
For the grants program, that's true.
And it's basically the same level as it's been, it was, 15 years ago in 2001.
Correct.
You mentioned some of the statistics about the increase in requests that you get for funding each year. But can you talk a little bit about what efforts, if any, the commission take to make sure that grant dollars are spent evenly throughout the community and support the diversity that is Nashville?
Yes, actually it's something that we actually passed an equity statement today at the board of directors and have intentionally tried to move into neighborhoods that don't have headquartered cultural institutions and work with a variety of organizations throughout the county. We do that in a couple of ways. One, we were on the front end nationally of requiring our grantees to demonstrate how they're reaching out countywide, and we track detailed information about how they're reaching out with low-income communities, people of color, et cetera. So it's a requirement of our grants that our grantees demonstrate that output. And secondly, we've consistently done outreach with neighborhood-based groups, with culturally specific groups, with the African American community and Latino community, encouraging more applications. So one of the things that we've seen is a 23% spike in people applying. So every year we're getting more and more people applying for the same amount of dollars because we are being intentional about our equity outreach.
Thanks. And along those lines, I understand that your grantees are broken into tiers based on their size, and the highest tier is just, I think, 5 or 6 institutions. Yes. Is there going to be an increase in the number of Tier 1 institutions in the coming years?
It's possible. I will say that almost at every level of our grants funding, and we fund organizations with no paid staff that are all volunteer, $75,000 and smaller, and we fund the Country Music Hall of Fame, which is our largest institution. At every single level of organization, arts organization in the community, because they are seeking to reach more people, they are all growing. An example is Southern Word, which is sponsors the Youth Poet Laureate program. They incorporated in 2008 with a half-time person and less than $50,000. Their budget this year is $450,000. They're serving every high school in the county, most of the middle schools, and reaching 4,000 students. But our budget has been the same. So our ability to invest in that organization that is growing is stymied by the fact that the overall pool is the same, and we have more people who are doing more work in that pool.
Will the new, I'm going to get the exact name wrong, the National Museum of African American
Yes.
Music, will that be a grantee this year?
They have been a program grantee for the last 2 years. They've not been eligible for basic operating support. In the next cycle, NAM will be eligible for basic operating support. Oz Arts will be eligible for operating support. New Dialect Dance Company. So the other thing is you have to have been an operating organization for several years so we can document that you're a good investment for the city before you're eligible to apply. In the next cycle, so FY18, we will have at least 5 to 6 fairly large institutions seeking operational funding with the pool that is the same.
And this is the last question. You touched on this in some of your introductory comments, but let me ask you directly. With this level of funding compared to peer cities, are we providing adequate funds for the Arts Commission to do the job we've given it? I see your chair shaking his head now.
I might let him address that question.
You can use, that microphone's hot.
Right here. I think that's a great question and something that really has broad-reaching impacts across all of our economy. When we're thinking about recruitment of industry, we compare ourselves to our peer cities. And I think that when we think about funding of the arts, we should do the exact same. And so when you look at that on a per capita basis, when you compare us to Charlotte, for example, they're spending $15 per individual, and we're spending $4. So I do think that those are important metrics for guiding the budgetary process moving forward.
I also think it's important to think of Nashville as a global international city, and one of the things that we have exported globally for decades is music. I think increasingly you see the high level of quality that's happening in our arts community being exported elsewhere. So for example, 3 films from the Nashville Film Festival that won awards got Oscars in the last couple of years. An opera is being produced right now that was staged here by our local opera company at the New York City Opera Company. Increasingly, we need to invest in these things because they become additional products that the city is known for externally. So it's not just sort of to be nice, it really is to sort of generate new levels to our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You, Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Director, for being here. As you were just saying, our creative community is kind of our brand. It's our unique competitive advantage. Investing in that is success in the 21st century. Given that over the years you've been painting a picture that your budget has been flat, say the budget had a proportional increase, which is not huge, but would be maybe several $100,000 additional a year. Would you have priorities about how you would like to see that spent if this did have the same increase as the rest of the Nashville budget?
I want to acknowledge that the mayor's budget does add to an area that we desperately need, which is temporary art, and the council for 2 years added Thrive funds, which are neighborhood funds. It is now time for us to invest in the grants program. So to your point, all of that money would be put into the grants pool. Our priority, I'm assuming, and the commission makes this decision, not me, my staff direction would be to heavily invest that into operating support. General operating support is the single widest reach we have for our cultural organizations. It allows them to pay their rent, the things that some funders don't allow them to pay. It allows them to pay staff, and so sort of putting that money into the general operating grants pool would be our single biggest priority that I would recommend to the board of directors.
And would you have a guesstimate about what size funds would be appropriate for that investment?
I think at this point, any direction is great direction. I feel like the conversation that we very much want to have with the council and the administration and the larger community is the fact that this is a long-range issue. It's not going to be solved in one budget cycle, likely. That in order for us to be competitive to our peer cities, to be at the $9 to $10 million a year level that Austin is or that Portland is, this is a long-range conversation. And so I think what we would be thrilled about is a forward momentum on the grants program this year and a conversation that we can kind of move forward with over the next couple of years about how we get to really investing in what is our competitive advantage.
Thank you.
Councilman Pulley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief question about the allotment for additional funding for creating local artist jobs.
Yes.
As you well know, in our district, we have local artists that reach across the very, very broad spectrum. So I was just curious if you'd expand on this a little bit more and just tell us a little more about who you are targeting and what you're targeting them for.
Sure. We received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to launch a local artist basically training boot camp, teaching local artists in a variety of disciplines how to do public art in the public sphere, how to manage a project, how to work with contractors, how to contract with the city. We announced Monday those artists. There are 25 of them covering 17 different council districts, at least one, maybe two in yours. What will happen is through the summer they'll go through this program, and then both the National Endowment funds, which I think there's about $30,000 in that pool there, and the $50,000 in the mayor's budget will be commingled, and then artists will propose projects in their neighborhoods that are temporary. They're not meant to be permanently cited public art, and then we will review those and jury them and award those funds. We imagine the funds would go out in about $5,000 increments.
Nice. Will you be using some of those that have been around a while, who are very distinguished, to help you train these artists?
We will. Actually, Brenda Stein is in the back. She's a public artist who did a piece at our Bellevue Public Library. And so our intent is to take the local artists that we have been training and who've been doing public art to bring them into that training circle. We're also working with an organization out of Chicago who teaches artists specifically how to work in community contexts so that they're really working and listening to your constituents and not just sort of doing art that is sort of not loved and embraced by the neighborhood.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate that explanation.
Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. Just to make sure I understand, when I look in the budget book on page I-41-4, it shows other expenses that looks like maybe that's the grants program. It's 1.922 million, 1,920,000.
Yes. Anything that's about 1.9 million is the grants program.
Is the grants program. So that doesn't have a lot of other stuff. So
No.
and it looked like in your this year's budget you had just wanted to bump it up to 2 million and then 3 million the following year. Am I understanding
no,
that right?
the submitted request was to add $2 million to the baseline budget. The
Okay.
3-year request that we submitted to the administration began to move us over a 3-year period much closer to our peer cities in Austin.
Gotcha.
So Austin is about $10 million, as is Portland. Charlotte, about the same. So that was a request to sort of begin to move us closer there.
So that would bump us up to roughly 4 million this year and then 7 million and then 10 million along the way.
We realize it is a giant ask and a giant, huge expansion for our budget. It's really budget that goes back directly to the community. I mean, 75% of the money our department gets goes right back out in grant contracts and vendor contracts. So our department is people and grants and payments to artists.
Gotcha. Okay, so anything moving in that direction would be
Yes.
progress from where this is.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Hager.
Thank you for being here. I just got one question.
Yes, sir.
Who's doing the murals downtown on the walls of the buildings? Do
That
y'all
is
do
not
those?
us. The city is not
Okay.
doing that. That is an international artist collective. Those artists they're Belgian and from Rio and things like that. The Gibson Custom Guitars has been paying for those artists to come in and do the work and for the supplies. All those murals are on private buildings.
Yep.
And we do not have a mural approval program for the city. They all comply with the downtown sign ordinance. We've made sure of that. And all the proper permits were pulled, and 5 more are coming in June. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Council Lady Van Reese.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate you calling on me. I am not a part of the Budget and Finance Committee, but I feel like I'm part of your tribe, so I'm here as a former executive director of the Nashville Shakespeare Festival from 07-09 and as a member of the communication staff at the Nashville Symphony in 12 and 13. I can tell you that thank you for the job. I am interested to know, I know that, asking for $2 million was, you took a deep breath, and
Yes.
I understand that. You said that that's currently we're at about $4 a person.
$4.12.
There you go. About. I know that you mentioned here on the flyer that you sent out about 4,500 creative workers currently being paid through arts grants.
Yes.
How many jobs in general, because those are creative workers, but how many jobs do you think are affected by the work that the Arts Commission does?
That's a great question. So that number on your thing is the direct jobs. Those are part-time, technical, contract, and artistic jobs that are funded via the grants that we give. We estimate, and the Frisch Center actually did a really great national study about this a couple years ago, that for every sort of one job that is directly funded, there are probably 3 or 4 ancillary ones. So someone's vacuuming the Frisch Center, someone's doing catering there, someone's doing parking there. So we know that every direct job we nets a lot more. So I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I think it's important to think of jobs, the Arts Commission as a jobs creator, and it's a ripple effect certainly in the community.
Thank you for that. I think it's important for us to understand that as we're looking for jobs for Nashvillians, that this is a place for us to do that. And a reinvestment into ourselves is a no-brainer when it comes to the creative class and who we are as a culture and who we've decided to be as a city. That should almost go without saying. It's a point of shame that I think that our numbers are at this rate whenever our peer cities are so much different than that. And I know that I will do all I can to get whatever I can and look for some help from my fellow council members to find the right place to find some money for this. And I'll do my best to try to find something. One thing that I did want to mention, I've also been a process of the grant process. And if you could speak to that as far as how one applies, how it's reviewed, and how that works, so that I've had the stack of grant applications myself to go through, and a lot of people don't realize how that happens.
Yeah, sure. And first of all, I would say that we know that moving us towards our peer city goal is a long-range goal. We understand that we won't get there this year. We really wanted to just elevate the conversation for this body and for the general public so that it has a sense of urgency. The grants process, this council actually approved the grants process a long time ago. All of our grants are reviewed by citizen panels. So in all the 7 categories we award grants in, grantees apply, and then our grants are reviewed by your constituents. Usually 4 to 5 of them read a giant stack of grants and score them. Our staff does not score. Our board simply does not change scores. Our board basically approves the allocations of the funds that you put in the grants budget. So whatever the grants budget is this year, what our board does and our staff does are recommend how we use that based on the scoring system that citizens apply. So it's a very transparent process, a very open citizen process. Every year we engage between 25 and 35 citizen review panels. They've been happening this week. We have a couple more panels next week. So our office has been very full with your constituents reviewing public grants. So
I know a lot of effort is taken to make sure that the folks that are reviewing those grants come from all parts of the city and look like Nashville and are reviewing that. So I thank you for that. I think that a lot of Nashvillians may not realize that. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to share that information. And, I will do all I can. Thank you.
thank you. You can also self-nominate a panelist at any time on our website. So.
Council Lady Dow.
Thank you. I think I missed the early part of the meeting, so I'll catch it on tape because I know that you've answered 2 of the questions I had that I ask every year. But I wanted to ask, do you have something that has like a breakdown of what percentage of the art that we funded this year was done locally versus contracted out or awarded to people outside of Davidson County?
Are you talking in the grants program or in the public art program?
I know the grants program is typically local, but the public art.
I can get that for you.
Okay.
I can definitely get that for you. Sort of since 2006 was when our first installation happened to now, approximately 60% of the commissions have gone to local artists.
And
So
when you say local, is it
Tennessee
Tennessean?
artists, yes.
Okay, not necessarily Davidson County,
right.
but in
So
the state.
we do a local call. It's usually within a radius of a couple hundred miles, depending on the call. But since the beginning of the program, a very high. And if you were to look at public art programs around the country, that level of local artist investment is not typical. We have made an intentional focus on developing the skills of local public artists, helping with them with contracting, developing local fabricators. All of our bike racks are made by a fabricator in Nolensville. That is very atypical. Many public art programs around the country might do 1 or 2 commissions a year, and most of them are international artists or from the coasts. We've put a very big emphasis on that. And I'm really proud of it. The public art program, by the time we do our next installation this fall, it will have increased 5,000% since I took this job. From 1 piece in the ground to 50 pieces in the ground in 6 years is literally unheard of in the public art world. So I would be very remiss if I did not give the 3 people who basically made that happen, who are sitting out there, some props for that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the public art map. And, again, I just have to say this, that this was really good that you published this public art because people had an opportunity to see where the money is going. Yep. And the map is very telling when it comes to public art because we're still seeing that it's not reaching out into a lot of the communities. So a lot of people actually do not see this art because they're not in the city's core. And so again, I appreciate the Thrive Grant program, and I look forward to seeing some other efforts made to have public art outside of downtown. I would hope that the next pieces of public art we have are out somewhere outside of the downtown core and in some of our suburban communities around the city, because many of them, lack public art there. Aside of being in their public libraries, are attached up high on a public library, they don't have public art. And I'm very interested, again, having a piece of freestanding public art out in our southeast area.
Well,
thank
lucky you, today at our commission meeting at lunchtime, we approved $150,000 for a work at the new Smith Springs Community Center and $350,000 for the new Medicine Community Center. So both of the projects we approved today are completely out of the downtown core, and those are the only two new projects we're moving on right now. So.
Thank you, and that's great. I would like to see one. Smith Springs is wonderful, and it's mostly with our community centers, we do include some type of piece of public art, but I would like to see a nice freestanding piece of art somewhere out in the southeast area that is not tucked down Smith Springs Road, but is visible to the people like on the main corridor where they can see it coming into the community. And I have some spots that I'll be willing to share with you. So.
Thank you. We're actually in the process of a county-wide plan, much like the Parks Director right now, and I will definitely have them reach out to you and talk.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Council Lady Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Pymore. I just want to say thank you, for the tremendous amount of work that you do with the limited amount of resources. You and your staff and the commissioners, you are greatly appreciated by so many people in this city, and I just want each of you to know that the time that you commit to making sure that arts is accessed by our children and by everyday citizens in all corners of our city is truly appreciated, and I just want to acknowledge that. I'm overwhelmed with the work that you do, and I'm excited to see, just as Councilwoman Dowell and others have said, how you've mapped out this to where the average person can see where the dollars are going and where the efforts are going here in terms of art projects. What I'm disappointed in is that we are at the bottom in terms of our peer cities. And so I want to do whatever is necessary along with my other colleagues who everyone has expressed wanting to give support to you and your staff and commissioners to bump us up, because I do not like seeing Charlotte on top, and I definitely don't like seeing Austin second. I mean, I'm very competitive. So we've got to change that. As you know, one of my favorite pieces of art here in the city that just recently unveiled was the Sticks Project. Mm-hmm. And I talked to many of my neighbors, and they feel the same way. And we want something like that coming into Southeast Davidson County. I said, if I could just replicate that Sticks Project coming into the historic Una area somewhere along Murfreesboro Road, wow, you would just feel wonderful coming home every evening and leaving out. But I am going to piggyback off of Councilman Hager, because he took my question, actually, about the mural improvement program. Yes. That has been one of the biggest points of interest that people have expressed to me. Yep. It started out when I first started on the council, where former State Representative Janice Suntani worked with the other legislators and councilmen for that area and was able to get the mural on that overpass by the zoo. So that was kind of one of the first things that kind of spiked people's interest in that. The mural improvement program, what would it take for us to be able to jumpstart that? Because I think that could push out into our various communities what we're starting to see downtown.
So I'll answer that in a couple ways. A lot of the murals that have cropped up lately have actually been on private property. So I think we need a couple things to jumpstart a mural program. One, we need to continue to invest in local artists and their training. We have a great set of local artists, particularly in North Nashville, who are emerging as an incredible arts collective. Handful of those people are in our learning lab. So I think we need to continue to push for training for artists so that they can expand their craft. Two, I think we would need. We hope, actually, mural arts is a major point we're addressing in our countywide plan, which should come out this fall. And there will be a framework for what we need to do going forward for mural arts, both in terms of any policy changes that we would need to have, which I don't think would be very many, and then how we would fund it and how it would be a kind of continued advocacy and learning program. So I'm hopeful that by this fall, when our knock on wood, when our master plan is done, that we actually have a framework for going forward with mural arts that includes artist training, coaching, and a funding resource. So we could, yes, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And what I would like to provide as input into that is to that plan incorporating each quadrant at least.
Oh, yes.
With a mural piece of some sort so that the community could rally around that mural piece and then we kind of expand from there. But I'm very interested in trying to see how we can get that mural improvement program off the ground and continue our efforts in that direction with mural art like what we see downtown.
Great.
The Civil Rights
Yes, ma'am.
Project. Everyone is like really on eggshells and just really, really excited and anxious to see that project get off the ground and take shape. So I just want to commend the commission and your department for working diligently with Mr. Hood out of California and with our civil rights veterans here. They are extremely excited, and the momentum and the excitement is growing all over Nashville because the word is getting out that we're moving closer towards seeing that get off the ground. And I just want to thank you publicly for all of your work because that is hugely important in our city, in our history. And we thank you for putting a strong emphasis on that work. Thank you.
It's a great piece, and we should be breaking ground early fall on that piece, barring things outside of our control. So.
Thank you, Council Lady Johnson. I want to remind council members we're about 40 minutes behind, and out of respect for the other departments, appreciate if you keep it to questioning to operational budget issues. Thank you. Councilman Bedney.
So I take it that means I cannot talk about Schulman's statue. Okay.
Include a question about the operational budget, sure.
Yeah. So let me see how I can phrase this. Can you include, is there any money there to work on getting more art reflect the lives and histories of culture of New Americans in Davidson County? As we discussed before, my concern is New Americans tend to move on, and so we lose the memory of the place. We lose a history of something that was important in Nashville. And so, I mean, we have Somalis, Kurdish, Latinos, people from all backgrounds that have moved to Nashville. We just learned today that the Burmese that live on a apartment complex in Emerson Pike will have to move to another part of the state. So I just wanted to know if there is any, I'm sure there is, but if there is any possibility that you could use some of your staff, or if you need additional funding to look for grants to reflect that.
Well, one of the reasons and this council funded the Thrive program was that exactly, that small amounts of dollars go into neighborhoods. A significant number of those people are in low census tract neighborhoods, and many of them are new Americans. And we have continued to do outreach in those communities. Our grant application was translated in 4 languages this year, and we have continued to do outreach in neighborhoods that are underrepresented in our grants pool. So it is 100% core to what we want to do to make sure that that happens. And I think that more resources and more staff time that are proposed in the budget will allow us to do that.
I guess you want rebuttal, Councilman Schulman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do. I'm looking forward to that statue. Real quick, peer cities, I'm looking at the information about the per capita investment. Do you actually have big whole numbers of how much money goes into the budget each year for some of these peer cities?
I can get them.
If you can just get them and
Yes.
send them to us, that would be good. And source of funding for those cities as well?
It varies. In those 3 cities that you're talking about, Charlotte's is operational funding, Austin's is bed tax, Portland's is attached to a ballot measure related to the property tax.
Can you just put that all together and
Yes.
just send it to us? That'd be great. I will tell you that I was going to ask you about Red Grooms, but apparently we have found it. But apparently there's movement on it. So
Yeah.
there's some interest in if
That is not related to our operating budget, but I'm happy to talk to you about it after.
Okay, so I'll talk to you about that later. Thank you. I knew the chairman would be happy. The public art map, which is apparently through apps, as Council Lady Van Vries told me, is there a map someplace? I mean, just a hard copy map for people who come in from out of town who are interested in seeing our public art?
There's better than a hard copy map. There's an online mobile platform called explorenashvilleart.com.
I understand that part, but I'm talking about for people who, like me, who can't remember how to do the app.
We have a rack card at the visitor center downtown that
great.
talks about how to get on the mobile app. But if you
Right,
really
I guess
want a
that's
printed map, I can run one for your neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much. And the last question is sister cities.
Yes.
Do we tie into sister cities with our public art? Because obviously they have art programs, we have art programs. Do we ever tie together on any
Yes,
of that?
actually, the last 3 sister city visits, we've been involved. The Belfast visit and some of the others. I was talking with someone from Toronto the other day. So every time there's a visitor and exchange, we're part of that discussion, both from the grants and cultural space side, but also from the arts policy side.
Thank you. Seeing no others in the queue, Director, we appreciate you coming and giving them not the demonstration, but also the good news for Madison and Southeast. Thank you very much and appreciate all your support.